everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, the DRF race of the day for Saturday, February the 11th, race number 10 at Tampa Bay Downs. Kentucky Derby qualifying points on the line in the Grade 3 $250,000 Sam F. Davis Stakes. We're going a mile and a 16th. Let's take a look at this field. Please scan the QR code for race of the day access on mobile. There are two prior graded stakes winners in this field, Mike. Both of them are conditioned by trainer Danny Gargan. The number 9 Champion's Dream, who already has a race this year, finishing second in the Pasco Sprinting, and the Remsen winner W. your morning line favorite.
Feels like the 7 is, the logical starting point for this race, Dan. A horse coming off a win in the Remsen with a 90 buyer speed figure last time. I feel like he's kind of got to be your starting point for this race. And then once you decide what you want to do with him, you can move on to the others.
Both of W.'s victories, including the Remsen, of course, came over a sloppy track. We'll throw up the Timeform U.S. pace projector because this horse has shown some versatility. He's won from off the pace. He's won from just close to it. And considering this big, bulky field, there should be speed. Dreaming of Kona has speed. Zydeco stretching out from this outside post. He has to get forward in order to obtain good position. But there are several other horses. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they get close. Even the number 8 Nota I can see close to the pace.
Yeah, I can see this being a legitimate pace in here. That's probably only going to help the favorite in this race, Dan. The pace projector actually has him pretty close, and he did lay up on the pace last time in the Remsen, but they weren't going fast that day. He showed 2 starts back that he could rally into a setup and still run well.
A horse likely to face faster fractions than what he's seen in all of his turf starts is the number 1 Worthington, who's going to switch to dirt for trainer Michael Maker. Now, he's a son of Classic Empire out of a Monarchos mare. He does seem to have some dirt pedigree. It just seems like a very tough spot for a horse switching surfaces for the first time, a Kentucky Derby prep.
Yeah, I think I could go either way on that question, Dan. How tough is this race really outside of the 2, stakes winners that you mentioned, and they're both still really lightly raced. I don't know. Is this a super strong field? A bunch of horses who either have only a maiden win or maybe one allowance win here. Worthington, to me, while he has questions to answer as far as the surface goes, I think he fits right in with everybody else if he can transfer the form. He's got a great post here. Will he be as effective on dirty as he is on turf? That's a question you have to ask yourself before you bet him. But if he's going to be 20-1, I won't argue with you.
Let's talk about his most recent race real quick. It was the Dania Beach on turf. It was a race where he was basically wired by Candidate. He showed good speed. He probably could have made the lead. They made a decision to rate him. Maybe that was the wrong decision at that point.
It could have been, and I'll be surprised if he has the same kind of speed here on the main track. That I'll be surprised if they concede anything breaking from the rail. If nothing else, he can run to the first turn, and if others go, he could land himself in a really nice spot.
Prairie Hawk, the number 2, is also coming off a race in which he was forwardly placed, a gate-to-wire score at Tampa Bay Downs in a 2-turn first-level allowance. He's now won 2 races in a row. Prairie Hawk, however, as you can see, only beats 3 of the rivals, and the pace, as you can see, was very slow. He got to the front, went 25.50, and he grinds it out. They're going to be going a whole lot faster here.
Yeah, this made it a tough call for me, Dan, because I won't be surprised if this horse turns out to be pretty good. He's got a really nice pedigree. He is 2 for 2 since they stretched him out in distance. And I thought he ran well in both of those starts, but the last one is just a little bit, difficult to gauge because he just had all the best of it there, unpressured on a slow pace against only 3 other horses. I do think there were a couple of other good horses in that race, but this horse had all the best of it. And it just feels like he's not going to be a great price on this race.
Hall of Fame trainer Bill Mott's horses have been really firing on all cylinders down south in Florida at Gulfstream Park. He has the number 3 Classic Legacy, making his seasonal debut off a maiden win in the slop at Aqueduct. Let's watch that race. Going 7/8 of a mile back on December the 3rd. Didn't think much of this field, Mike. It was only a 4-horse field over a wet track. He was up close to a pretty moderate pace, and he sprints on home to win as an odds-on favorite should. This is going to be a tougher task, but he's very well bred and very well connected.
Yeah, those are things I think you want to keep in mind, especially if the price, gets pretty big in this race, which is possible. I can't say that I love, any of his 3 starts so far. He did win this race pretty easily, but it was not a good field, as you've mentioned, and he had a perfect trip. But he is bred to stretch out. He could be a good price in this race, and it's not a super strong field.
The number 4, Laver, is going to stretch out for the first time since his 3rd lifetime started. Keeneland missed. He did then graduate going a one-turn mile at Churchill Downs. Last time out in the Mucho Macho Man, going a one-turn mile at Gulfstream, saddled with an outside post. Couldn't really get great position.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see, how that race shakes out going forward, Dan. There are a few of the Mucho Macho Man also rans back in this field. We've already seen some of the hustle rans run back last week at Gulfstream Park. None of them seemed to do very well. I was unsure about the Mucho Macho Man as a race overall as soon as it was over. I didn't gain a lot of confidence in it last weekend, and I didn't really like any of the horses coming back in this race.
The number 5, Groveland, is a Godolphin homebred. Has never been off the board for trainer Owen Hardy. We just saw him finish second to Prairie Hawk. It was a race that didn't have much pace. Groveland was right on top of Prairie Hawk. He had the whole stretch to get by. He just wasn't good enough, so he's going to have to improve if he's going to turn the tables on that one at the very least.
Yeah, I'm looking at him the same way. He's another horse who's very lightly raced, so maybe he will take a step forward here. If you just want to say he broke out pretty badly at the start of that race, and you want to say that was enough to cost him the win, I didn't really look at it that way. I thought he only ran okay last time. Didn't really want to bet him back in here.
Classic Car Wash, the number 6, made his debut as an early 2-year-old, then was given some time to mature by trainer Mark Cassian. He has come back off the short layoff firing. 2 victories in a row, one sprinting on dirt at Gulfstream, then this race going 2 turns in a first-level allowance restricted to Florida breds over the Tapeta surface. And in this race again, he went right to the front. He got a very nice ride from Jaramillo. I like that he was able to create some separation at a key point in this race, showing nice acceleration to get away from the field in the third quarter, and then kept on professionally.
I like that too. He did have a pretty soft trip in here, Dan. No trouble making the early lead in this race from the rail. They didn't make him go fast up the backstretch. And then he just had plenty left when it was finally time to go. I still like the way he finished it off. I thought he actually ran even better on dirt 2 starts back. That was only going 7. It was not a good field, but he was just really comfortable tracking the pace in that race. And once he got room as they came to the stretch, once he got him out into the clear, I really liked the way that he finished that race off. I think this horse is improving. He showed that he can get a little bit of a distance of ground last time. This is a way tougher spot, but he's interesting at a price.
And he's versatile, as you mentioned. He showed he could rate and finish in that race 2 starts back. Fast pace on tap in here. He could be running late. The horse he beat last time out, the runner-up, came back to earn a 77 buyer, win second in a first-level allowance on turf. WNL's the morning line favorite. He's the horse to beat. He's won his last 2, including the Grade 2 Remsen. Let's watch that race going a mile and an eighth. Only his 3rd lifetime start. He got right up close to Arctic Arrogance in the early part of this race. They basically engaged in a match race all the way through the second turn into the stretch. WNL just went better. He's a professional, solid 2-year-old who ran a fast race here as a 90 buyer, and the only race he lost, he got beat by a horse that's come back to win multiple graded stakes.
Yeah, the debut at Saratoga actually looked like a race that he really needed. He didn't actually run poorly at all that day. When he won the second time out, Dan, it was a race where he was main track only off the turf, and he just got a really good trip. 3 horses contested it in front of him. He came running forward in the stretch and just sort of went right by. I wasn't sold on him after that win, but he obviously took a step forward last time, showed he can get a distance of ground, showed that if the pace is going to be slow, he's going to sit right up on it. Those things are all positives. He's just way the horse to beat.
Trainer John Terranova is perennially underrated, and he perennially sends out live horses at Tampa Bay Downs, including the number 8, Nota, who scored in a maiden race second time out. First off, a fairly lengthy layoff last time out. This race was at 6.5 furlongs. Nota showed good tactical speed. He sat just off the leader while saving ground. He shot on through, and he wins nicely. He's very lightly raced. I would not count out improvement. I expect him to improve. It'll be interesting to see how he copes with a faster pace.
Yeah, faster pace, and he's got to stretch out as well. So some obstacles in front of him, but another horse who really has run, pretty well, I think, in both starts so far, Dan. He's probably going to be a fair price in this race. So I don't think you want to get too overly concerned with whether or not you think he's going to stretch out in this race. If he can get the right kind of trip like you, I think he can contend in here, even though he got a perfect trip to win last time. I still like the way he did it.
The Champion's Dream, the number 9, like the number 7, WNL, trained by Danny Gargan, made his career debut the same day as WNL in another division of a maiden special weight, and he won very nicely from on the lead. He's only run one bad race, and that was in the Champagne over a wet track against a pretty good field. Here's his seasonal debut. He has recency over his uncoupled stablemate. It was the Pasco. We'll watch that in a bit, where he sat off the pace. He came with a good run to finish second behind Zydeco. He probably gained a lot of fitness from that start, and we'll see him go 2 turns for the first time here. He's bred to handle it.
Yeah, he had supposed you could just say that the little layoff he was coming off of last time. I guess you could say that maybe that's what worked against him at the end, because ultimately, and I don't know, Dan, maybe you disagree with this. He didn't really have any excuse in that race. They did rate him early, but he was in position. He had dead aim on Zydeco in the stretch, although Zydeco did float out and make this horse go to the inside. But he just couldn't get by that horse. I thought all in all, it was a little disappointing, even though his figure improved. And as Nashua, which would be the race I guess you want to try to judge him off of and say maybe, that's a race that shows that he's good enough. I still don't know how I feel about that race. I thought he ran fine in there, but I wasn't, totally blown away by it.
Didn't think the Nashua was the greatest field. Thought last time him being floated out and forced to come inside the winner might have just hampered his run a little bit. I think he gained experience from it. He has a lot to prove, and he's 9-2 on the morning line, but he does have credentials against this field. Dreaming of Kona's up next. You mentioned the Mucho Macho Man. This horse was placed first via disqualification. We're going to watch that race right now. You're going to see the leader, the horse that finishes first, Legacy Isle, drift out a bit, turning into the stretch, and it bothers Dreaming of Kona a little bit. I'm not sure if Dreaming of Kona would have won if he didn't get bothered. At least the horse that finished fourth, the one that's down inside that had all the trouble, General Jim, came back to win the Swale last week with a 90 buyer.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess why they made the call for disqualification there, but I didn't think Dreaming of Kona was winning regardless. But he does inherit the win there. Again, I didn't really like the Mucho Macho Man as a race overall. And this horse didn't really do anything in his first two starts to make me want to bet him back.
And the number 11, Litigate, goes out for the powerhouse Todd Pletcher stable. And this horse has some pedigree to go long. 5-1 on the morning line with Louis Saez aboard. A debut winner going 6.5 furlongs. Last time out at Gulfstream, he was second best to Cyclone Mischief, who was the beaten favorite and pretty disappointing last time out in the Holy Bull. But the sixth finisher from that race came back to win on turf with an 85 buyer.
Yeah, we'll see. That you're right. The winner, Cyclone Mischief, did come back in the Holy Bull, had to go without Lasix that day and was pretty bad. This horse will have to go without Lasix again, but it feels like a totally different situation. I actually liked his debut sprinting. I thought he ran pretty well in that race. He was just okay last time, I guess. He had a real shot to win that race. He hooked up with the winner as they came into the stretch, and he was just second best in there. I think he has it in him to take a step forward, Dan, and he goes for Pletcher, and he could fall into a good trip in this race. All those things are positives. I guess you just have to ask yourself, what kind of price do you want to take on this horse?
The 12, Zydeco, seeks his third consecutive victory. Now we'll watch the Pasco, where he got the measure of Champion's Dream. He showed good speed from the start in the 7/8 heat. You see him floating out to about the center of the track, forcing the great Champion's Dream to come inside of him. But I can understand Mike's point completely. Here's Zydeco. He looks a little bit tired. Champion's Dream has this entire stretch to get by, and he couldn't do it. Zydeco now has to do it at a longer distance with perhaps a faster pace setup and a tough post position. 20-1 on the morning line for a horse with some credentials, but he has to overcome some things here.
Yeah, I'm not going to knock him at all because he is a big price in this race. So if you like him, you should just really just bet him. And he did take a step forward last time. It's just not a race that I love or a performance that I love either, Dan, especially when you watch that stretch run. He looked pretty tired to me. He's sort of hanging on his wrong lead there. I'm not convinced he's going to stretch out.
Before we get to our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time for our Saturday race of the day, the Sam F. Davis. You're going for a price. Classic Car Wash is seeking his third consecutive victory. He's versatile from a running style standpoint, versatile from a surface standpoint. I think this horse has a lot of potential, Mike. You might get that price as well.
Yeah, I think he will be a price in this race. I just felt like maybe he'd get the right trip here, Dan. And he has looked good in his last two races. I realized that he had all the best of it last time, and he beat a bad field when he broke his maiden. But I just felt like things could go his way here. And after the favorite, WNL, who I think is way the horse to beat in here, I didn't really want the other horses who were going to take, some money in here. Champion's Dream, Litigate, maybe Prairie Hawk. I mean, I won't be surprised when they run well, but I don't want them at, 5-6 to 1.
WNL, as you mentioned, is the horse to beat. I think they've always treated him like a nice horse. Before his debut, he was working with Danny Gargan's older millionaire Tax. I think that was a good sign. And he's done little wrong on the racetrack. He just seems like he's found a good spot for his seasonal debut. Unfortunately, the price won't be there. 6-7-1-2 for Mike, 7-2-12-9 for me. It's the Sam F. Davis at Tampa Bay Downs on Saturday. Good luck.